Okay, so I guess the title of this video is a little bit provocative because this is YouTube and long, comprehensive titles tend to repel viewers. And I have enough experience with people arguing against the title of my videos instead of the substance of my arguments that I suppose I should try to qualify the title or the thesis of this video. So what I'm actually arguing in this video is that our perception or understanding of matter is evidence that we are more than material. That is, we are also spiritual beings. Okay, so to explain what I mean by that, let's start with an analogy. Imagine if we were all colorblind and the only color we could perceive is what we currently understand to be the color blue, and then no other colors were perceptible to us. All we could see are shades of blue light. But if that were the case, then the word and the concept blue would be meaningless to us because it is only meaningful to us currently because it is a distinguishing feature. We only understand and have awareness of the color blue because we have perception of that which it is distinct from, which is to say, other colors. Blue only has meaning for us because we know of other colors like red and green as well. But if we were colorblind, then we wouldn't know about other colors, and therefore any attempt to describe an individual color as if it were distinct from other colors would sound like nonsense and superstition to us. But because we aren't colorblind, we do know what blue means. We recognize when a thing is blue and when it's not blue. Blue is only meaningful to us because some things are not blue. If everything were blue, then blue would be an incomprehensible concept and word to us. Okay, so what about the word matter or material or that which is made of matter? Because there are plenty of people like materialists who believe that matter, the physical world, is all that there is. And furthermore, that we ourselves are merely material beings. But like we saw in the example of color, if everything was blue, then blue would be a meaningless word. But the word matter does mean something to us, which means that it must be a word with some distinguishing power. If everything is material, then the word material would be meaningless to us, just like if everything was blue, then the word blue would be meaningless to us. But matter is a word that does mean something to us. But how can that be possible unless it distinguishes from immaterial reality or the incorporeal? The truth is, we have a whole range of rational experiences and perception that correlates to something non-material. For example, I can think about numbers in a meaningful way. I can even do operations on them in my mind without ever having to associate them with something in the physical world. I can also think about triangles and trees and animals in general without ever having to reference them to a specific triangle, tree, or animal. These are known traditionally as universals. And in fact, all human thought, including scientific inquiry, is oriented to establishing this kind of knowledge. Every time we encounter something that we can perceive, we are trying to translate that from a particular instance into a general or universal knowledge. And this is actually our first instinct when it comes to rational thinking and asking questions of a rational nature. And I know this because I have little kids, and every time they see something for the first time, which is fairly often, they always ask the same question, which is, what is that? So let's imagine that they see a porcupine crossing the road for the first time, and they've never seen one of those before, which isn't that hard to imagine. So they ask, what is that? We're so used to asking and hearing this question that we don't tend to really dissect what's going on when we ask it, but really just think about it for a second. We're saying, I am now aware that a large rodent mammalian type creature with needles for hair exists. I've seen it, but now I want to know what it is. When we say what is that, we're saying I'm now familiar with the that in the question, but now I need to know what that is. In other words, I want to know what its essence is. It isn't enough for me to know that a specific instance of a thing exists. I need to know how it fits into the broader universal understanding of my knowledge. And like I said, all scientific thought works this way. The aim of science is to make observations of new phenomena, which can then be translated into universal knowledge. We're always going from observations of specific instances into a general theory of a thing. We're going from observing an animal to understanding a species. Which tells us that when we think rationally, we're going from a specific to general, from a material instance to a spaceless, timeless form of knowledge. When we reason, we're turning everything that we perceive, everything that we encounter, into something abstract that we can then organize and think logically about in our minds. Okay, so what does any of this have to do with an immaterial soul? Well, nobody's going to dispute the claim that we are material beings ourselves, right? And how do we know this? Well, because we have material experiences. We have material senses like taste, hearing, touch, and vision, which communicate the material and the physical world to us. And from those experiences, it isn't a huge leap to say, well, hey, because I can interact with the material dimension of reality through my senses, I must be material myself. Well, what if you have experiences and a perception of a non-material nature? And I'm not just talking about that time you dropped acid and started hallucinating. I'm talking about every moment of every day that you use your rational faculties, every time you indulge the thought process behind the question, what is that? Every day we're having non-material experiences, which we've assumed can be isolated or traced back to a physical organ like our brains. But the fact is, there's nothing material about the ultimate content of our thoughts. It's immaterial, spaceless, and timeless, and cannot be isolated to our brains. Our brains are part of the process of thinking, but they don't explain the entire process. And if our rational faculties are constantly interacting with something that is distinct from matter, again, a word that only has meaning because we can distinguish it from the non-material, then I think it's safe to say that our rational faculties have a non-material, or what you might call a spiritual sensory ability. Therefore, we are at least partly spiritual beings. In closing, can I just say that if you don't find that persuasive, consider what we mean by the word material, especially if you think that describes the whole of reality. We mean that which can be perceived by our physical senses. So if you say only what is material actually exists, you're saying only what can be perceived by human physical senses exists. When we talk about the physical or the material world, we're talking about the world that exists according to our physical senses. So we can talk about things that are visible, but if the word visible means anything at all, if that's comprehensible to us, it must admit that there is such a thing as invisible, and that this word describes some aspect of reality. There are some measures of reality which are not available to our vision sense. And if so, then it's probably fair to say this is true for all of our senses. And what we're describing at that point is the incorporeal. The laws of morality, the laws of logic, the universals which all of our knowledge seems to be directed towards establishing, these are incorporeal realities. And the fact that you and I perceive them demonstrates that something about our intellect is also incorporeal. In the same way that because we can apprehend the material through our physical senses, we know that we are ourselves material. And it is this part of us that is incorporeal, that isn't traced back to some physical organ or some physical aspect of our bodies, that will continue to exist beyond the death of our body because it is not dependent upon the body.
Hey, thanks for watching. The reason I can continue making content like this is because of the generous support of my viewers. If you are able to support the work I'm doing, there are a couple of ways you can do that: by donating through my website or by joining my online community, The Reinforcements. Both can be done by visiting brianholdsworth.ca, the .ca because that's how we intranet in Canada. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. Again, thanks for watching.